The grand crystalline palace of the Zalari Empire stood like a jewel in the heart of the city of Lumeris. Its towers shimmered under the twin suns, and its walls reflected rainbows into the wide streets below. Inside, the throne room was filled, with music from glass instruments and the soft hum of alien voices speaking dozens of languages. Delegates from across the galaxy had come for the Emperor's summons. The throne itself was a work of art, carved from a single block of shimmering starstone and raised high above polished floors. On one side sat the Emperor, tall and robed in flowing silver cloth that moved as if touched by unseen winds. On the other side, seated just slightly lower, was Princess Zayra. She was young, but her presence commanded attention. Her skin shimmered with a faint violet glow, and her eyes, like liquid gold, seemed to look through whoever they gazed upon. She was known throughout the Empire for her sharp tongue and quick wit. Many admired her, others feared her. Today, her attention was focused on the line of champions who had answered the Emperor's challenge. Each champion came from a different world, each representing a race known for some skill, strength, speed, psychic power, or mastery of technology. And then there was the human. Captain Elias Ward stood quietly at the far end of the line. His armor was nothing like the sleek designs of the others. Where the Zalari warriors wore smooth plates of mirror-like crystal and the Korans wore segmented armor with glowing veins of energy, Elias's suit looked old. It was made of matte, gray plates, bulky and plain. It had scratches and dents that spoke of years in battle. The helmet was a simple visor with no decorative lights, no markings, nothing to impress the eye. Princess Zayra tilted her head, studying him with a smile that was not entirely kind. "Is that armor?" she asked, her voice carrying easily through the hall. "I thought perhaps Earth had sent us a mining droid by mistake." A ripple of laughter moved through the court. Several alien nobles whispered to each other, glancing at Elias as if he were some curious relic. Elias did not respond. He stood straight, his hands resting on the sides of his armor, the black visor hiding his eyes. The princess's smile grew sharper. "I am curious, human," she continued. "Do you wear such heavy shells because you cannot fight without them? Or is it because you fear a simple breeze might break you?" More laughter echoed, bouncing off the high crystal walls. Even some of the other champions smirked. Still, Elias said nothing. This silence only made the princess press further. "Perhaps it is wise," she added lightly. "Your people are, what is the word? Fragile?" She leaned back in her seat, her golden eyes glittering. "But tell me, Captain, can that shell of yours even keep up with the trials? Or will you trip over your own feet before we finish the first one?" Elias slowly turned his head toward her. The movement was calm, deliberate. For a brief moment, even though the visor hid his face, Zayra felt the weight of his gaze. It was not anger. It was not fear. It was something else, something steady, like the quiet before a great storm. When he finally spoke, his voice was deep, calm, and carried across the throne room without effort. "I did not come here to trade. Words, princess," he said. "I came here to win." The laughter in the hall died instantly. Some of the nobles looked uncomfortable. Others looked impressed that a human would speak so directly to the Emperor's daughter. Zayra's smirk faltered for only a heartbeat before she regained it. "Confidence," she said softly, "is easy when you are still standing in the palace. We will see if you keep it in the trials." The Emperor raised a hand, and the room fell into respectful silence. His voice was low but powerful. "Enough. The trials begin tomorrow. Tonight the champions will rest. The Celestine Gate must be guarded by the worthy, and the worthy will prove themselves." The champions bowed or saluted in their own ways. Elias inclined his head slightly, then followed the others as attendants led them out. As the line of warriors disappeared through the tall doors, Princess Zera's gaze lingered on the human. There was something about the way he walked. Not rushed, not dragging his feet, but moving with quiet purpose. No swagger, no show, yet each step seemed placed with care. One of her ladies leaned close and whispered, "Why give him attention? Princess, the human will not last past the first trial." Zera did not answer right away. She watched the gray armor vanish into the shadows of the hall beyond. For a reason she could not explain, the image stayed in her mind longer than she expected. That night, in his quarters, Elias removed his helmet. His short dark hair was damp with the heat from the armor. He sat at a plain metal desk, checking, each joint and plate with practiced hands. The armor was old, yes, but it was reliable. It had saved his life more than once. He had no intention of replacing it with flashy, untested designs just to please alien eyes. He thought about the princess's words. They had not angered him. He had heard worse, on battlefields and in diplomatic halls alike. But he understood something. The trials ahead would not just test his strength. They would test his people's place among the stars. He allowed himself a small smile in the quiet room. Let them laugh. They would not be laughing for long. In her private chamber, Zera stood before a tall window looking out over the glowing city. The night lights danced across the crystal towers. Yet her thoughts kept drifting back to the human. Why had he not reacted? Why had he not defended himself with words or even pride? His stillness was strange. She shook her head and turned away. Tomorrow, the trials would begin. She would watch him fail, and perhaps that would answer her questions. But deep inside, though she did not admit it even to herself, she felt a small, unshakable doubt. The twin suns rose above Lumeris, casting golden light over the crystal streets. The city buzzed with excitement. Today was the first day of the trials. Every balcony and terrace around the great arena was filled with people from across the galaxy, eager to see who would become the guardian of the Celestine Gate. The great arena itself was a marvel of alien design. Shaped like a giant ring, its walls shimmered with protective force fields, and the air inside was filled with faint humming from the machines that would control the trials. Above the highest stands, the royal balcony stood, draped with banners of silver and violet. Princess Zera sat in her place beside the emperor, her golden eyes sharp with interest. Below, the champions entered one by one. The first to appear was a massive Koran warrior, his segmented armor glowing with bright red energy. Then came a slender Luvian, her long limbs moving with the grace of a dancer, the air around her crackling with faint static from her psychic field. Others followed, reptilian soldiers, insectoid hunters, and machine-like beings from far-off worlds. Finally, Captain Elias Ward stepped into the arena. His gray armor seemed even more plain under the morning light, but his movements were calm and steady. No gestures for the crowd, no dramatic poses. Just a slow walk to the starting platform. Zera leaned forward slightly. She still expected him to be the first to fail, but she wanted to see exactly how. The announcer's voice echoed through the arena, translated instantly into a dozen languages. "Champions! Your first challenge is the anti-gravity labyrinth. Inside this field, the usual pull of gravity will vanish. You must move from one end of the maze to the other, collecting 3 energy seals along the way. The first 5 to finish will pass. The rest will be eliminated." The walls of the labyrinth rose from the arena floor, shimmering faintly as the anti-gravity field activated. Loose dust began to float upward. Some spectators cheered in excitement. Others whispered predictions about which champions would dominate. Sharp tones sounded and the gates opened. The Quran warrior launched forward with a powerful leap, his energy armor flaring as he pushed off the walls. The Luvian flowed through the air like water, twisting between narrow passages with astonishing flexibility. Two insectoid hunters scuttled up the walls, their legs finding invisible grips. Elias moved last. He stepped forward into the maze, and immediately his boots lifted from the floor. But unlike the others, he didn't kick off wildly. Instead, he reached out and caught hold of a wall panel, pulling himself forward in short, controlled motions. From the balcony, Zira frowned. "He's slow," she murmured. "Too slow." The Emperor, watching silently, said nothing. Inside the labyrinth, the field was disorienting. Without gravity, momentum was dangerous. A single wrong push could send a champion spinning into a corner, wasting precious seconds. Already one insectoid had misjudged a turn and crashed into a wall, his limbs flailing as he tried to right himself. Elias advanced steadily. When he reached an open section with no nearby walls, he crouched slightly and pushed off at just the right angle to glide directly toward the next surface. The bulk of his armor gave him a steadier path, preventing him from bouncing off like the lighter fighters. He found the first energy seal, a glowing disc floating in the center of a spherical chamber. Other champions had to fight against their own drift to grab it, sometimes missing and wasting time. Elias extended a magnetic clamp from his gauntlet and locked onto it in one try. The crowd noticed. A few murmurs rose. This human was moving, more cleverly than expected. Zira's frown deepened. The second seal was placed in a narrow passage that curved sharply to the left. Alluvian was ahead of Elias, but as she twisted into the turn, her long limbs brushed the wall, sending her spinning sideways. Elias caught a passing rail, stopped himself completely, and then entered the turn with a precise push, gliding directly to the seal. The final seal was the hardest, floating in a chamber where the air itself swirled in chaotic patterns. Small. Fans built into the walls blasted bursts of wind in random directions, sending competitors drifting off course. Two champions collided here, their armor clanging together before they tumbled toward the exit. Elias stopped at the entrance, watching the rhythm of the blasts. He waited 3 seconds, then pushed forward at exactly the right moment, using one burst to carry him straight to the center. The crowd gasped at the timing. Princess Zira leaned forward, now watching with genuine curiosity. This was not luck. He had planned every move. With all 3 seals secured, Elias turned toward the finish gate. Instead of racing, he moved with the same careful precision as before, letting the heavier weight of his armor keep his path steady. He crossed the gate. As the 4th champion to finish, the Quran came first, the Luvian second, and a machine being third. Elias followed, then a small crystalline creature just behind him. The rest would be eliminated. The announcer declared the results, and the crowd applauded. Some cheered for the winners, others for the dramatic failures. On the balcony, Zira tilted her head. "Interesting," she admitted quietly, "but the next trial will break him." The Emperor's eyes flicked toward her. Or perhaps it will break the others. Elias left the arena without celebration. In the waiting chambers, he sat down on a bench, checking his armor's systems. The anti-gravity field had drained some of the power from his stabilizers, but nothing serious. One of the other champions, the crystalline creature, approached and tapped his shoulder. "Human," it said in a voice like tinkling glass. "You move like one who has done this before." Elias shook his head. "Never this exact thing. But the rules are always the same. Know your pace, read the space, and never rush the first move." The creature tilted its head, clearly trying to understand. Elias offered no further explanation. Above, in her private chamber, Princess Zira replayed the image of him gliding through the labyrinth. She had wanted him to fail. Instead, he had made it look deliberate. That, she decided, was even more annoying. The next trial would begin at sunrise, and she would be watching more closely than she cared to admit. The dawn in Lumeris came with a pale silver light, the kind that made the crystal towers shimmer softly instead of blaze. The city was quiet in the early hours, but inside the great arena, workers were already preparing for the second trial. The audience was restless, curious to see how the remaining champions would fare. The first trial had been about movement and control. The second would be about something far more dangerous, the mind. From her place in the royal balcony, Princess Zara leaned forward as the announcer's voice echoed through the arena. Champions! Today you face the Hall of Echoes. Inside, the walls will project visions drawn from your own memories, fears, and doubts. The only way to pass is to cross the hall without surrendering to the illusions. Lose focus, and you will be trapped until time runs out, the crowd murmured in excitement. The Hall of Echoes was infamous. Many strong warriors had failed here, not because of injury, but because their own minds betrayed them. The gate opened, and the first champion stepped inside, the massive Koran warrior. At first, his stride was confident, but within moments, his posture shifted. He swung at empty air, eyes wide as if fighting an unseen enemy. A minute later, he stumbled out of a side exit, eliminated. The Luvian entered next. She glided gracefully at first, but then stopped, trembling. Her lips moved as if speaking to someone who wasn't there. The audience could not hear the illusions, but they could see her face twist with emotion before she backed away in defeat. One by one, champions entered and emerged, some shaken, some pale, some whispering to themselves. The crowd loved the drama, but it was clear. This trial was breaking the confident smiles of many. Finally, it was Captain Elias Ward's turn. From the balcony, Zira sat straighter, her golden eyes narrowing. She wanted to see what kind of weakness the human's mind would reveal. Elias stepped into the hall. The heavy doors closed behind him, and at once the light dimmed. The crystal walls glowed faintly, shifting in color like deep water. A faint whisper rose from the shadows. At first it was unclear, like wind in a narrow tunnel. Then it formed words in his own language. Go home, Elias. This is not your fight. The air thickened, and shapes began to form around him. Memories pulled from his past. He saw the corridors of an old ship, dark and damaged, the smell of smoke and burning metal in his mind. Figures appeared. Crew members he had once known, people he had failed to save. For a moment, the ache of guilt pressed hard on his chest, but he did not stop walking. His voice was steady as he spoke in the same language the whispers used. Storms. Pass, he said quietly, and I am still here. The illusions tried again. The walls shifted, showing Earth, his home, in flames under an alien sky. He could almost hear the cries, the chaos. He closed his eyes for a heartbeat and took a slow breath. Storms pass, he repeated, the words like an anchor in his mind. The images flickered, trying to regain strength, but each time they reformed, he kept moving forward. The pace was not rushed, but it was constant. From outside, the audience could only see his shape moving through the strange light of the hall. The other champions had staggered or stopped many times, but Elias moved as if the illusions were nothing more than fog. Princess Zara leaned forward, frustrated. Why is he not reacting? She muttered. He should be seeing something. The Emperor's voice was calm. He is seeing something. He simply chooses not to answer. Inside, the whispers grew sharper, crueler, throwing every shadow of failure and loss they could find. But Elias had walked through worse storms before, storms of real fire and real loss. Compared to that, these were only echoes. Near the end of the hall, the floor seemed to vanish beneath him, revealing a vast abyss. Many champions had turned back here, unable to step forward. Elias did not hesitate. He reached out, touching the edge of the illusionary floor, and found the real surface, just below the false image. He stepped down calmly and kept going. When he emerged from the far gate, the crowd erupted in surprise. He had crossed the hall faster than any competitor that day, and without a single visible stumble. Elias paused only to give a small nod to the officials before walking toward the waiting area. From the balcony, Zahra could not hide her curiosity anymore. She turned to one of her advisors. "What did the human see in there?" The advisor shook his head. "Only the trials machines know that. But whatever it was, he did not let it stop him." The Emperor's gaze remained fixed on Elias. "Strength of the body can be taught," he said quietly. "But strength of the mind, that is earned." Indar. The waiting area, one of the eliminated champions, a tall reptilian, asked Elias, "How did you ignore the visions? They show the things you fear most." Elias glanced at him, then back at the floor. "You don't have to ignore them," he said. "You just have to walk through them." The reptilian tilted his head, clearly not understanding, but Elias offered no more explanation. As the day ended, the remaining champions prepared for the next trial. Outside, the city was alive with talk about the human who had crossed the hall, of echoes, as if it were a simple corridor. Some thought it was luck. Others thought he had no fears at all, which, to the Zalari, was almost unthinkable. But in her private chamber, Princess Zahra stood at her balcony, staring out at the city. Lights. She knew it was not luck. She knew he had fears. Everyone did. The difference was, he had refused to bow to them, and that, she admitted to herself with some reluctance, was more dangerous than any weapon. The third trial would come at sunrise, and it would be combat. The kind of test she was sure would show the limits of the human's armor and skill. But now, there was a small, stubborn thought in her mind that would not go away. What if he proved her wrong again? The third morning of the trials was the loudest yet. The great arena shook with the voices of thousands of spectators. The air above the crowd shimmered with floating screens that showed close-up images of the champions. Today was the trial many had been waiting for. Combat. From her seat on the royal balcony, Princess Zahra watched the preparations below. The arena floor had been cleared of all obstacles, replaced with heavy gates made of reinforced alloy. Behind each gate, faint growls and mechanical roars echoed. The air smelled faintly of heated metal and oil. The announcer's voice rang out across the arena. "Champions, today you face the arena of beasts. Within these gates are machines built for one purpose, to destroy. You must fight them, disable them, and survive. The last 5 standing will pass to the next stage." The crowd erupted in cheers. Everyone loved the arena of beasts. It was fast, dangerous, and unpredictable. The gates at the far side opened, and the champions entered. The Quran warrior stood tall, his armor glowing bright red. The Luvian's psychic energy flickered faintly around her. Other survivors from the previous trials took their places, each with their own weapons ready. Captain Elias Ward walked in last. His gray armor looked heavier than ever under the harsh sunlight. He carried a simple shock staff, nothing fancy or glowing like the weapons of the others. From the balcony, Zahra folded her arms. "This will be his end," she said quietly to herself. "No armor can save him from a beast's claws." The Emperor said nothing, his eyes fixed on the human below. A deep horn sounded. The heavy gates around the arena floor began to rise. The first beast stepped out, a towering machine shaped like a predator from some long-extinct world. Its body was made of steel plates, its legs ending in claws sharp enough to slice stone. Plasma burned in its eyes, and its tail swayed like a whip made of segmented metal. The second gate opened, and another beast emerged. This one with 6 legs and a head that split open to reveal spinning saw-like jaws. More followed, each different in design but built for speed, strength, and destruction. The beasts moved fast. One lunged at the Koran, warrior, who met it with a blast from his energy cannon. Another charged the Luvian, who used her psychic force to fling it aside. Elias did not rush forward. He took a slow step back, watching the movements of the nearest machine. His visor tracked the joints, the rhythm of its steps, and the way its claws dug into the arena floor. Then, when the beast lunged, Elias stepped aside. The claws slammed into the ground, sending dust into the air. Elias struck with his shock staff, not at the head or body, but at a joint in the beast's shoulder. Sparks flew as the joint locked, causing the machine to stumble. From the balcony, Zara frowned. He was not fighting like the others. He was dismantling. The beast swung, its tail at him. Elias raised his forearm, letting the armored plate take the blow. The impact slid him back several steps, but his balance held. He moved in close, jamming the staff into another joint. The beast's right leg gave way, and it crashed to the ground. Elias pulled a magnetic clamp from his belt, slapped it onto the exposed machinery, and stepped back. A moment later, the clamp's charge detonated, not an explosion, but a sudden burst of electromagnetic force. The beast's systems went dark. The crowd gasped, then cheered. The first beast of the day had been taken down by the human. Another machine charged him, faster than the first. This one leapt, claws extended. Elias dropped his staff and raised both arms, letting the beast's claws clamp onto the armor. While it tried to crush him, he twisted, pushing the beast's momentum sideways. They both fell, rolling across the dust. The audience shouted in excitement. From above, Zira gripped the balcony railing. "He's letting it hit him," she murmured in disbelief. On the ground, Elias reached under the beast's chest plating and yanked at a cable cluster. Sparks erupted, and the beast convulsed. He rolled clear as it collapsed. Around him, the other champions fought in their own styles, some with speed, some with overwhelming force. But the human's method was different. He didn't try to destroy the beasts outright. He dismantled them piece by piece. By the halfway mark, only 7 champions remained standing. The rest had been forced out or knocked unconscious. 2 more. Beasts emerged from the gates bigger and faster than the first wave. One went for Elias immediately. He had no staff now, only his hands and a small blade from his armor's forearm. The beast lunged. Elias sidestepped, sliding his blade between 2 plates at the neck. A shower of sparks erupted, but the beast kept moving. Elias ducked under its next strike, grabbed the plating on its side, and climbed up onto its back. The crowd roared as the human clung to the machine like a predator himself. He drove the blade down into the control housing at the base of its skull. The beast shuddered, then froze. Elias slid down and stepped back, breathing steadily. When the final horn sounded, only 5 champions remained. Elias was among them. The crowd cheered wildly. Even some of the nobles who had laughed at him on the first day now clapped. From the balcony, Zara sat back slowly. She hated to admit it, but there was no denying what she had seen. The humans. Armor might have looked old, but it was strong, and so was he. Strong in a way that was different from the others. The Emperor turned his head toward her. "Still think he will not last?" he asked softly. Zara didn't answer right away. Her golden eyes stayed on the human below, who was calmly picking up his shock staff and walking toward the gates. Finally, she said, "He won today. But the trials are not over." The Emperor's faint smile was unreadable. "For some, they have only just begun." The great arena was quieter than usual on the 4th morning. The remaining champions had faced danger, skill, and fear. Now the next trial would test something else: endurance. Princess Zara sat in her usual seat beside the Emperor, her golden eyes scanning the arena floor. Only 5 champions remained. The Koran warrior, the Luvian, the crystalline creature, a machine being, and the human, Captain Elias Ward. She had watched him for days now. He had moved through each challenge with the same calm patience. She had seen champions faster, stronger, and more advanced than him fall. Yet here he was, still standing. It annoyed her that she could not explain it. The announcer's voice broke the silence. Champions, today's trial will not test your weapons or your minds, but your ability to endure. You will carry the core stone across the arena through shifting barriers, heat waves, and magnetic storms. Any damage to the stone will mean elimination. Your gear will be inspected before you begin. Inspection. That word caught Zahra's attention. Arena staff moved toward each champion. The process was simple. Scan for hidden devices, remove anything forbidden, and check for damage to the armor. But when they reached Elias, something unexpected happened. The scanner at his helmet's side flashed red. Possible seal damage, the technician said. We need to remove the helmet for safety. The crowd stirred with interest. Until now, no one had seen the human's face. Elias was still for a moment, as if deciding. Then he reached up, pressed 2 catches on the side of the helmet, and twisted it free. The visor lifted, and for the first time the court saw the man inside. He was not alien or strange. His face was plain in the sense that it was simply human. His skin was lightly weathered from years in harsh places. His dark hair was short, slightly damp from the heat of the armor. But what struck everyone most were his eyes, calm, clear, and steady, like someone who had seen storms and chosen to keep walking through them. The crowd fell silent. The nobles who had laughed at him days before now leaned forward in curiosity. From the balcony, Zahra's smirk, the one she had worn, the first day, never appeared. She was not sure why. She had expected to see weakness or age, something to justify her earlier mockery. But there was none. He looked younger than she thought, but not inexperienced. And the way he stood without the helmet, he somehow seemed taller, more present. Elias handed the helmet to the technician, who inspected it quickly and gave a nod. No real damage. Clear to proceed. He took it back, but did not put it on immediately. Instead, he looked up, straight toward the royal balcony. For a brief moment, Zahra felt that same weight she had sensed in his gaze on the first day. It was not challenge, nor arrogance. It was simply presence, the kind that made it hard to look away. The announcer's voice returned, pulling the attention back to the trial. Champions, take your places. The core stones were brought out. Large crystal orbs glowing faintly with inner light. Each champion received one. They were heavier than they looked, and the surface was smooth, making them hard to grip. The trial began. The first section of the arena was simple, open, ground under a bright sun. But soon the barriers shifted, tall metal walls sliding into place, forcing the champions to find narrow paths while carrying the heavy stones. The Quran tried to push through with brute force, smashing barriers aside, but the vibrations cracked. His stone. He was eliminated within minutes. The Luvian used her flexibility to slip through small gaps, but the heat waves in the second section drained her strength. She stumbled, almost dropping the stone. The machine being moved efficiently, but the magnetic storms in the final section pulled at its metal body, slowing it badly. Elias kept the same pace from start to finish, never rushing, never stopping. Too long. When the heat waves came, he shifted the stone to one arm and adjusted his breathing. When the magnetic pull began, he dropped low to the ground, letting his armor's weight keep him steady. From above, Zahra watched every move. He didn't fight the arena. He worked with it, adjusting as though he had studied the obstacles before. They even appeared. When Elias crossed the finish line, the crowd cheered. Only 3 champions remained now. The human, the Luvian, and the crystalline creature. After the trial, the champions returned to the waiting area, and the emperor rose to address the arena. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice carrying to every corner, "will be the final test. One of these three will become guardian of the Celestine Gate." The crowd roared in approval. In her private chamber that night, Zara stood before a mirror brushing her long hair, but her thoughts were not on herself. They kept returning to that moment in the arena when the human had removed his helmet. She had mocked him once, thinking him slow and outdated. Yet without the armor, he had not seemed smaller or weaker, only more certain. She remembered the calm in his eyes, the way he had looked directly at her without bowing, without challenge, without fear. She set the brush down and stared out the window at the glowing city. Something was changing. She still wanted to see him tested in the final trial. She still told herself he could fail. But now, she also wanted to see what he would do if he won, and she could not decide which thought unsettled her more. The morning sun spilled golden light across the great arena, turning the crystal walls into a shimmering sea of colors. The city of Lumeris was alive with anticipation. Today would decide who would guard the Celestine Gate, the portal to unknown, worlds and great power. Princess Zara sat quietly beside the emperor, her usual sharp expression softened by curiosity. Only 3 champions remained: the Luvian, the crystalline creature, and Captain Elias Ward, the human who had surprised everyone. The arena floor was cleared for the final challenge. Unlike the earlier trials, this one was not a test of speed, strength, or endurance alone. It was a test of character, of heart, a challenge designed to reveal the true nature of a guardian. The announcer's voice echoed through the arena. "Champions, your final task is to navigate the maze of truth. Inside, you will face not only physical obstacles, but also the truths of your own soul. Only one will emerge worthy." The gates opened, and the champion stepped inside the vast maze. The walls shimmered with light and shadow, shifting as if alive. The crowd watched in silence. Inside the maze, the challenges were subtle but powerful. Each champion faced visions that questioned their motives, fears that clawed at their minds, and choices that tested their courage. The Luvian faltered early, confronted by visions of failure and doubt. Her graceful movements slowed as whispers echoed in her ears, telling her she was not enough. She fought to keep moving, but eventually she stopped, overwhelmed. The crystalline creature shimmered with quiet strength, but stumbled when faced with a choice to sacrifice itself to save another. It hesitated too long and was trapped in the maze's shadows. Only Elias pressed forward steadily. The maze whispered to him, but he did not flinch. Visions of past battles and losses appeared before him, but he spoke softly, almost to himself. "We do not choose the storms we face. We choose how to sail through them." The maze shifted again, revealing a final obstacle, a vast chasm too wide to cross by any normal means. The other champions would have stopped here. Elias paused, looking at the gap. Then he removed the last piece of his armor, the gauntlet on his right hand. It was a simple gesture, but it shocked those who watched. With bare hands, he reached out and touched the glowing wall of the maze. The light pulsed under his touch, and slowly, a bridge of shimmering energy formed, spanning the chasm. He crossed it carefully, bare hand steady, heart calm. When he reached the center of the maze, the walls dissolved into light. The crowd inside the arena gasped as the gates opened, and Elias stepped out. The Emperor rose, his voice ringing with respect. "Captain Elias Ward, you have proven more than strength or skill. You have shown wisdom, courage, and humility. You are worthy to guard the Celestine Gate." The crowd erupted in cheers, but Princess Zara stood quietly, her eyes fixed on the human. She stepped forward, her golden gaze meeting his. "You have shown us what we did not see," she said softly. "Not just a warrior, but a guardian." Elias smiled gently. "My people say this: we are not the fastest, the strongest, or the most advanced, but we never stop finding a way." The princess nodded slowly, understanding blooming in her eyes. "You have changed how I see humans," she admitted. "You are remarkable." He bowed slightly. "Most expect us to fail, but sometimes the greatest strength is quiet endurance and the will to keep going." The crowd cheered again, but in that moment, the rivalry had ended. A new respect had begun. As Elias took his place beside the Celestine gate, the princess looked out at the stars beyond the city, stars that now seemed closer, full of possibilities. The story of a human who was mocked, tested, and finally honored had become a legend, one that would inspire many for generations to come.